WNST, late breaking and all that good stuff after a couple down days out there at Red Rocks in Denver. This guy is familiar with Red Rocks and the beauty of the Arizona sky. He is Pedro Gomez of ESPN, and of course Pedro Gomez, ESPN, out on Twitter, one of our defending baseball champions around here. Look, man, I could not have you on at this point without this Red Sox-Orioles thing. We're waiting for sort of the next zit to pop in this thing. I don't know if there's going to be more beanballs or not, but, between then and now, we had this Harper situation last week. We talk so much about it, and every time I talk to somebody in baseball, there's always some uglier brawl down the line. What can really be done about it, Pedro?
Nestor, the game's been played for 140 years, and this has kind of always been a part of the culture of the game. I do think that this current commissioner's office is moving toward trying to eliminate this as much as possible. And I think they're making and are going to make stronger strides in trying to eliminate it. I don't know that you can 100% get rid of it, though. As long as a pitcher has a ball and someone has a grudge, I don't know that you can completely eliminate it from the game. But, making suspensions longer, stronger, that's certainly one way to go about it, but, that kind of has been tried, and it's still going on. So, I'm not sure that it will ever be 100% eradicated from the game.
Well, and in the case of the Red Sox and the Orioles and the ugliness a couple weeks ago, the one thing that happens in these type of things, they see each other often, very often.
Yeah.
More often than the Nationals and
the
Giants are going to see each other. And, over a 4-game weekend this weekend, there's a chance a pitch is going to get away naturally, right? I mean, there's going to be 1,000 pitches thrown this weekend. One of them will be Aaron, and then, then the intention thing comes back in. And, as a fan, I'm kind of sick of it. As a fan, I want to see longer suspensions. I want to see deeper fines. I know the Players Association is never going to allow that.
Yeah, it's something that's difficult to implement because there are collective bargaining issues that are also part of this. In terms of suspensions, though, the commissioner's office has some bit of, they can be unilateral and just say, hey, this is a 12-game suspension, this is a 15-game suspension. And at that point, yes, the union can come back and try to fight it down and everything, but the commissioner's office can try, and at that point, maybe, the public gets behind it. And a lot of times, let's be honest, until the public truly gets behind it, nothing is going to change. Because let's not forget that until Congress got involved in PEDs, in the performance-enhancing part of the game, nothing really happened. And then all of a sudden, Congress got involved, the public got involved, and all of a sudden we had drug testing and we have suspensions. So, it's step one of getting there, I think. But I don't think we're anywhere near close to like I said, eliminating it. And then, like you said, Nestor, I mean, a pitch can get away. It truly can, not go where you want it to go. It could slip. It could, there's things. And then all of a sudden, it's like you said, now intent gets involved. What was he meaning to do? What was he trying to do? And, that's a really hard road to go down because you don't know what's in somebody's mind.
Well, in the case of the Sale Machado thing, that sort of plays in everybody's mind, but a different kind of team we're going to see here in the Red Sox. First off, Price is back. Farrell has survived yet another lynching in Boston, a couple of weeks ago, and you go back as far as Knife the Mac and McNamara 30 years ago, or nothing ever changes there. But every slump, the manager gets in trouble there, and I think even now that they're above 500, it feels to me like the Red Sox are starting to find themselves a little bit after the loss of David Ortiz and really beginning the year without the guy they thought would be their ace.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are people that believe if they had gotten swept in Oakland, and remember they lost on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it was a 4-game series. They played on Monday, but they managed to win on Monday and then went on a 6-game winning streak eventually. But there are a lot of people that believe that if they had gotten swept in Oakland, John Farrell would not have been the manager of the Boston Red Sox on that next Tuesday, the day after, when they returned home. So, it's always iffy. Dave Dombrowski did not hire John Farrell. So there's no necessary job security there for John Farrell. It is basically of what have you done lately. So they could be a 5 or 6 game losing streak away from having a new manager. Having said that, though, they are seemingly playing better here these last couple of weeks, and that's certainly something that they need if John Farrell's going to keep that job. But we've seen that Dave Dombrowski isn't somebody that's necessarily afraid to make a move when he needs to make it.
Well, I don't know that any of the moves that are coming for them on the trade side that they have much to deal with left after the Moncada deal and going out into the market the way they have over the last couple of years. And the money that was poorly spent on Ramirez and Sandoval still sort of comes back to bite them. But for me, looking up and down the stats 2 months into this and having been a couple of weeks since I examined it, nobody there's having a career year offensively. This time last year, Pedro, they came in here. I think they were batting .296 as a team this time last year, and they had 5 guys, including Ortiz, having sort of career years. I'm waiting for Betts and Bogarts and these guys to really wake up, and certainly Jackie Bradley really feels like he's regressed this year.
Well, and in talking to opposing pitchers who face the Red Sox, they all, to me, have said that having David Ortiz in that lineup made a huge difference. And yeah, he only came up once every 9 times, but that presence in the middle of the lineup is what truly kind of affected and shaped that Red Sox lineup. So, yeah, they're having to learn to play without David Ortiz, and maybe they're just getting to that point. But, you've got to have other guys stepping up, so to speak, and that hasn't really happened to a large degree there. And you're talking about, big contracts that haven't played out. Let's not forget I think it was $72 million that they paid to Rusney Castillo, who's not even on the 40-man roster anymore, the Cuban outfielder. So that's money that's still being tied up as well.
He is Pedro Gomez. You can follow his journey at Pedro Gomez, ESPN, out on Twitter, and, of course, at the Worldwide Leader. And before I get to the Orioles, I want to give you a little platform here because I was going to say you can follow him everywhere, but you better follow him to Lubbock this weekend. You're used to these big league ballparks and these big league players, but your boy has gone down the road from Phoenix to Tucson, where my cousin played tennis as a Wildcat there many, many years ago, and is enjoying this ride. And I think Dad's having a good time with this baseball thing all of a sudden, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're, my son pitches at Arizona, and they're in a regional. They're going to be in Lubbock, Texas, starting tomorrow. My wife and I are flying there and this weekend, and cannot wait to see what happens in the regional. Last year, they were able to go to Lafayette, Louisiana, win a regional there against a very tough group, go to the Super Regional in Starkville, Mississippi, and beat Mississippi State, and then go on to Omaha. So a tremendous experience for him last year, and he's certainly hoping, as well as his teammates, that they can repeat.
In the case for you, were you a guy that studied College World Series or familiar with it before your boy gets involved in this and is trying to kiss the ring? I mean, I know it can get real busy, right? I mean, covering Major League Baseball the way you have, and maybe around draft time you hear about it, but until you get a kid into that meat grinder of actually doing it, maybe you gain a further appreciation for what every one of these kids we've ever stuck a microphone in front of their face, what they've gone through in their journey, and for their parents and their coaches and their schools, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you this. I never followed it as closely as I have these last few years that he's been down at University of Arizona. I followed it, but the level of intensity that I followed it with was not nearly the same as it has been. And it's a great game. It's where a lot of major league players come from, and that part alone, makes it really interesting because you end up seeing a lot of guys that you watched play college ball make it at the major league level. I mean, if you're talking about the Red Sox alone, Jackie Bradley Jr., Benintendi at Arkansas, JBJ at South Carolina. I mean, there's a lot of players that come from the college game that make it to the major league level. So you end up seeing a lot of really, really good players, and it's a fun game to watch. And as a parent, Nestor, I can tell you, as a parent of a pitcher, it is absolutely nerve-wracking to sit there in the stands all of a sudden. After watching, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of baseball games in my life, the level of nervousness that I feel when he's on the mound is not even close to anything I've ever come to from watching all these games.
All in. Pedro Gomez is on the Wildcats, so keep an eye on them in Lubbock this weekend. Hey, we're all in on the Orioles here, and I think we were a lot more all in when they were 12 games over 500 than this slide that they've been on lately. Look, I know we talked in the offseason. Last time I think I had you on, we were talking about their pitching and the deficiencies in their pitching. Boy, Bundy's been better than advertised, and the rest of it, on its best day, it's been a box of chocolates. I don't know what the expectations are going to be of Miley. Certainly, Gosman looks to be a mess right now. Tillman looks to be a shadow of what he once was. And I don't know that there's any cavalry here coming from the minor leagues or the Alec Ashers or the Obaldo Jimenezes. This is, Bucks managed to battle through this thing along with Duquette the last 3 or 4 years. At some point, someone's got to pitch and someone's got to step up, and I don't see any Wei-Yin Chens or Miguel Gonzalez's, streaking into this situation to save the day.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to hope that somebody does step up, and short of that, it's going to be another miracle season that Buck Showalter kind of, sews together. This is a club that has been in the postseason 3 of the last 5 years, and due in large part to some really, no matter what Orioles fans think, really spectacular managing over the course of 162 games to kind of steady the ship and get them into the postseason. Look, when it comes to X's and O's, I don't think that there's an equal. In-game X and O's, I don't think there's an equal to Buck Showalter in the game. And he has certainly done the job and has earned widespread respect from other managers in the game for what he's been able to do. But, at some point you have to have some horses. And that's a potential landmine for the Orioles this year, especially. And you and I talked about it a few months ago about the starting rotation specifically.
Well, and what can be done when, the Jimenezes are getting trudged out there every 5th day, and when they really have not put together the kind of farm system that you would have liked to have seen over the last 5 years, I believe.
It's tough. It's tough, and you've got to somehow try to slug it out some nights, which sometimes they can, and there's other nights where you just see that they're not on par with their opposition, and they'll lose games because of that. So it's a really difficult spot to be in when you don't have, like you said, the cavalry coming in to be able to save the day, and very few prospects at the minor league level that can step up. So it's not easy, and that's why it's hard to make the postseason. Only 10 clubs a year do it, and as bad as some fans may think, you do have to almost take solace in the fact that they've been there 3 of the last 5 years, and that's really shown a lot of what this current Oriole club has been able to do. But at some point, you might get exposed, and that might be happening.
Can anything tarnish Machado at this point? I mean, even batting Mendoza at this point, a third of the way through the season, it certainly has not been a good look for him offensively.
No, and here's the thing, Nestor. You go by career performances when you evaluate someone, especially someone as young as Machado, who has succeeded so much at such an early age. And there's a reason they call it an average. They don't call it a one-day number. They call it an average over 162 games. I would strongly suspect that at the end of 162 games, Machado's numbers are going to be in line with what he has done throughout his career. But, that's not, that doesn't give you much solace with the way he has struggled these first couple of months of the season for the most part. But I do think that at the end of the day, Machado's numbers will be where they're supposed to be at the end of the year.
I thought the Yankees were the sleeping giant all off season, Pedro. I can't say that I saw the Judge thing happening, or that Sanchez would not be as big a part as you thought. But they look poised to be real trouble here for a long period of time. We're very familiar with that. You're familiar with that. We saw them come in here 19 times a year and beat our brains in when they were spending $200 million, and the old man was putting money in his pocket here. But they have reloaded, retooled. They can do anything they want to do on July July 31st to acquire players. They have money. They have young prospects. They have guys that are performing. Boy, this is about to enter a very scary period, I think, for the rest of the AL East, and especially I would think Toronto, Baltimore, and Tampa, who are going to have real trouble competing if this Yankee thing is not an aberration.
Well, and it doesn't look like it's an aberration. And here's something to also remember. They have about $40 million, maybe over $40 million coming off the books at the end of the season, because they're still paying A-Rod about 22 this year, and CC Sabathia is making about 19 or 20. So there are $40 million coming off the books at the end of this season. And like you said, if there's anything we know about the Yankees, they are willing to open that checkbook right back up and spend, and whether it's this year or next year. So they do not look like they're going away anytime soon, and they do look like they are building for the next 7 years or so at this point. So that's always something you have to deal with in the American League East. You know, when the monster is dormant, okay, things are good. But when the monster is awake, we could see again what we saw in the 90s and the first decade in this century.
Well, we're seeing something in Houston that's kind of special, right? And unprecedented. I know you've flown in and out of there many times.
Yeah.
They had their one little World Series run, and it got real quiet, real dark for a period of time. But, boy, do they look good, and they're putting together the kind of special year you get a feeling about a team, and the Cubs were that team last year. Certainly Houston looks poised at 22 games over 500. That looks like they're just going to waltz into this thing this summer.
Well, yeah, the American League West is not strong other than the Astros, and here's what I would say. I mean, they went through that 6, 7, 8-year period where they were losing about an average of 100 games a season. So they were getting high draft picks, much like the Royals were, for the first part of this decade, much like the White Sox are probably going to do right now. And what you cannot do when you have a top 10 pick is miss. And that's what the Royals did when they drafted guys like Billy Butler, Alex Gordon, Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas. They hit on those top 10 picks. And the Astros, you'd certainly have to say, are hitting for a high average when you look at guys like Carlos Correa and George Springer and Alex Bregman. Those are all top 10 picks, and they've hit on all of them. So if you do have those lean years, you've got to hit. The Cubs, did the exact same thing when they were losing 90-plus games a year. They had top 10 picks, and they got guys like Javi Baez, Kyle Schwarber, Chris Bryant. They didn't miss. You cannot miss if you have a top 10 pick, because you can get very good very quickly. And you just look at the Royals, the Cubs, and the Astros, and you see the pattern that has developed, and it's hitting on those top 10 draft picks. And it's really hard to compete when a club is getting that kind of talent early in the draft and knowing what they're doing with those picks.
Carrying that trophy up and down Waveland's gotten a little heavy out there on the north side, hadn't it, Pedro?
It has, and, in talking to Bruce Bochy, every time the Giants won the World Series in those 3 odd years, or even years, I should say, the odd year after, he always told me it was really difficult because, first of all, the season lasted so long, into November, basically. And then all the players are being pulled in all sorts of directions over the winter because you're whatever town you're from, hey, we're lighting up the Christmas tree on Thanksgiving. Can you come be our honorary person to light the tree? Can you come speak at this engagement? Can you do? And so your off season really doesn't exist when you win the World Series. And a lot of times what Bochy told me is it carries over, and guys are just dragging, and they're so tired. And I think that's what we're seeing from the Cubs right now. I wouldn't call it a hangover, so to speak. It's just exhaustion.
Well, it was a hell of a party. I saw it on Twitter.
Well, they just don't have an off season when you win. And I think that's what we're seeing from the Cubs right now.
I was out in Colorado, out of Red Rocks earlier this week, and they had some excitement there. And I know you're out in the desert in Arizona, where they've been waiting a long time to try to put it together. Boy, both of those teams are giving a nice little run on the Dodgers at a time when, well, my Padres are always in the cellar, but the Giants are down this year. But there is some new blood, I think, all the way along. I mean, Milwaukee's got some energy this year as well as Houston. I think Minnesota's been re-energized a little bit in the early part of this year. And just having the Yankees back in this thing as a factor sort of stirs the drink. It is a different kind of year this year, isn't it?
It is, and that's always good for baseball. I think it's good when it's spread out among teams that haven't been up there for a while. And in terms of the Rockies, that's a club I've been watching closely for a few years now. And I think adding Bud Black to the mix as manager has been a huge boon to that franchise. He, when I would go out to Scottsdale during spring training, the players, as much as they loved Walt Weiss, the manager of the last few years, they just spoke so glowingly of the communication that Bud Black brought to that office. And, you've seen the players respond in such a positive way. And the biggest thing is, you look at the Rockies right now, they're top 10 in ERA, they're top, I want to say upper half in bullpen ERA. They normally would be between 25 and 30 in the majors in both of those categories between starters and relievers. And to be able to talk about the Rockies and talk pitching before offense tells you what a transformation that franchise has made. They've got rookies in the rotation that are really, really pitching well. John Gray isn't even back, and he's their best pitcher. He's rehabbing now, so he'll be back probably in a week or two. And that's a team that I don't think is going to go away. I don't believe they're going to go away.
Rockies in pitching, man. We've been hearing that for 25 years, since Mike Hampton and Denny Nagel, right? Since Jerry Royce.
But now we're hearing it the opposite way. It's not that the Rockies have no pitching. It's that the Rockies have pitching, which is, who would have ever thought we'd hear that sentence ever?
Hey, man, I hope you have a great summer. I hope your boy extends these things down to Tucson for you to continue to have some fun and get out to Omaha and do whatever they do in Omaha in the middle of the college baseball World Series. It's always great catching up with you, man. We'll hit you further on down the road. Now, you've piqued my interest. I'll be watching the Wildcats play baseball here this weekend, Pedro.
All right. This weekend in Lubbock.
Take care of yourself, Pedro. Great having you on, man.
Okay, man.
Pedro Gomez from ESPN. You can follow his journey at Pedro Gomez ESPN on Twitter. Hundreds of thousands follow him and his work as an ESPN baseball reporter. It's always privilege and a pleasure to have Pedro on talking some ball. We got the Red Sox in town all weekend taking on the Orioles. Luke will be at the ballpark at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Any breaking news will happen first on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And of course, Dennis is here every Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home on WNST. It is the SSV on WNST. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.